welcome those who are joining us via the internet at this service of worship here at Piedmont Presbyterian. Our Old Testament lesson today comes from the book of 2 Kings, the 5th chapter, verses 1 through 14. This is the story of Naaman, the commander of the army of Aram, a man who had leprosy. Naaman, the commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans, on one of their raids, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his Lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, you know that I have sent you my servant Naaman, so that you may cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to give death or life, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." But then Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, and sent a message to the king. "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and his chariots, and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger out to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry, and he went away, saying, "I thought that for me he surely would come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned and went away in a rage. But his servant approached him and said to him, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more then, when all he said was wash and be clean?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like that of a young boy, and he was clean. And then our New Testament lesson from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 1, verses 40 through 45. A leper came to him, begging him, and kneeling, he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand, and he touched him, and said to him, "I do choose. Be made clean." And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was clean. After sternly warning him, he sent him away at once, saying, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go and show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded as a testimony to them." But he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the word, so that Jesus could no longer go into towns openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. A leper came to him, begging him, and kneeling, he said to him, "If you choose, you can make me be clean. Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I do choose. Be made clean. This story from Mark's Gospel, like the Old Testament story of the prophet Elisha and the soldier Naaman, focuses on the miraculous power of healing that Jesus had and that some of the prophets before him had. Here in Mark's first chapter, just like last week, we have a picture of Jesus just beginning his ministry, traveling through Galilee with the disciples, where he wanted to proclaim his message about God's kingdom. But on the way, he kept getting interrupted and sidetracked from his task by those who wanted to be healed. Jesus was increasing in his fame in the area, but not necessarily in the way that he wanted. People came to him from all over and brought the sick and the demon-possessed. Even lepers came to him. And he cured them, but at great cost to his private time and his private life. Now his mission to spread the gospel was being interrupted yet again. This time by someone with leprosy. Someone who should not even have dared to approach him. You see, leprosy in Jesus' day was any name. It was a name that was given to any skin disease. Any skin disease. Even something as simple as a pimple. Because there was no real understanding of the differentiation between true leprosy and just an eruption on the skin. All were thought to be contagious. Because of this fear, anyone that had a skin eruption was declared to be a leper and had to make that disease known to the priest, and was then separated from the rest of society. They were banished from the villages and the towns and had to go and live outside the walls, without family, without friends. There were special laws that were prescribed for the way lepers had to be treated and had to live. There are 2 whole chapters in the Old Testament book of Leviticus dealing just with leprosy. It wasn't so much that the disease itself ruined one's life, but that the priestly pronouncement that one was now unclean separated them from the temple, from life, from family. For all this uncleanness was not just about the body, but also became psychological and spiritual. Separation meant separation from everything, including access to God. Lepers might as well have been considered dead. They were shunned by their family. They dressed in torn clothing. They covered their faces. They put ashes on their heads and walked about crying, unclean, unclean, to warn other people away from them. Unless someone came along that might be able to cure them. Then they could go to the priest and be pronounced clean once again, perform purification rites, and return to live in society. It was a lot of red tape, but it was better than being in exile. So this leper dares to approach Jesus. one who was reputed to have healing powers. If you choose, he begs, groveling on his knees. And miracle of miracles, Jesus chose to touch him. Not only to reach out to him, but touch him literally as well. What a risk Jesus took. Remember that Jesus also was a devout Jew. And although he did not necessarily believe in all the legalistic interpretations of the law that the Pharisees had, still he lived by its basic commandments. Choosing to touch someone who was unclean made you unclean as well. Then you had to go to the priest in the temple. You had to undergo purification rites and be made clean once again before you could worship. Jesus could have been shunned by his friends and his family and the disciples as well for touching this man. But his compassion for the man's plight and his desire to restore him to health overcame any hesitation that he may have had. Jesus chose to risk the consequences that touching another person might have. For us as well, choosing to reach out and touch someone always involves risk, does it not? Our good intentions may not be understood by others. They may wonder what we're after. Or the person we try to help might become too dependent on us or take advantage of us. You know how it goes sometimes. But I think for us the major risk in reaching out and touching someone is the emotional price that we know we may end up paying. We choose to help. And in the end, we really end up caring about another person with all the feelings and fears that may bring. That's because when we invest our time and energy in any caring relationship, we risk not being cared for in return. Yet with all the risks involved, we are still called to reach out and touch those who are in need. Jesus did. And if we are committed Christians, we can do no less than he did. But think about this. Mark's story has another point of view, that of the leper. Think for a moment about the risk that he took. If you choose, he begged Jesus. Jesus might have been so irritated at the interruption that he responded in anger, or he might have been offended by the approach of this unclean person and might have driven him away. Or he could have simply turned his back and ignored him. These were all distinct possibilities as far as the leper knew. Yet he chose to ask. And Jesus had compassion. No wonder that he could have later keep this good news to himself. It was a miracle. For me, the miracle of the story is not only that Jesus touched the leper, but that the leper first risked reaching out and asking. It's truly a miracle whenever two people reach out simultaneously to one another. For then both lives are touched and both are changed. Let me tell you a story. At one point in my life, not too many years ago, things were very different than they are now. My children were away in college. I had been battling an illness for some time and felt pretty helpless about what my future had in store for me. My husband was supportive and he tried, but he really could not get me out of this dark place. It took something greater. Then one day, an old friend of mine from high school called me on the phone. Back then, Jim and I had been good friends, although we hadn't kept in touch, and I had not seen him for many years. He had recently moved back to Winchester to live with his mother, he said, and he was trying to find someone that he knew who might want to get together and have lunch once in a while, just have conversation. In truth, he said, he was bored. But he said he would understand if I chose to walk away. You see, he told me, he had AIDS. He had come home knowing that he would probably die in the next 6 to 8 months. Well, I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. I did say that I would think about it a lot. At that time, I had no experience whatsoever with AIDS or anything related to it. And frankly, it frightened me. But on the other hand, as a Christian, I felt compelled to reach out to him as I knew that Christ would do. So I decided to learn everything I could about this disease. And I found that I really had very little to fear. Unless I came in contact with any of his bodily fluids, there was no reason not to be near him or even to touch him or hug him. So I took a risk and I said yes. And that was the beginning of a really rewarding, very deeply loving